Hey guys, I'm Cal from Kelly T Black Metal Reviews. I am joined by an absolute Aussie metal icon tonight, a drumming legend, a blast beats beast, as I call him, Mr. Matt Skitz Sanders. Matt, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I was very, very excited about this interview. You've got a lot going on, and we're going to jump into all that in a very short time. Your your resume is so impressive. I mean, the caliber of bands, the plethora of bands that you've actually played in your career. I mean, you've founded and played with Damage, Destroyer 666, Abramelin, Atomizer, Terror, Manticore, Misery, I love Misery, Hobbs Angel of Death. I mean, fuck man, there's so many, and I've probably missed half the list. But this question that I have might seem mundane, but I feel like it's important because it's a question I really want to know. How did it all
Yep.
start for you? You know, what made you want to pick up the sticks and start bashing the drums? And was it always extreme metal for you, or was it a progression into the more extreme spectrum?
It pretty much started when a good friend of mine at school was started playing drums,
Yeah.
and he was actually playing in the school jazz band, but he influenced me to pretty much have my first go on the drums. So I had a crack on the drums. Everything sort of went okay. I could play like a rock beat. And then I spoke to my parents and I said, what about doing drums? And so I started doing drums like pretty much like a few months later,
Right.
in early 1988.
Right.
And when I first started, I was into hard rock bands, mainly like AC/DC, The Cult,
Right.
stuff like that. Motorhead was the first few bands that I actually really took much notice of. But I really didn't know where it was going to go from there. Um, I didn't even know really much about how far or what style or what I was going to get into, really.
Mm.
I just knew I liked hard rock, so that was the starting point there.
Yeah, I think for most of us metalheads, and I hear that with musicians a lot, the more I talk to musicians, that it starts out around that rock, kind of heavy rock, and then you just get that need for more extreme, more heavier. So I assume that's exactly what happened to you, given where you ended up with the bands, that's for sure.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
very, very, very much actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, the 90s, what a time to be alive, but what a time for metal, you know. I mean, this was such a time where Australian extreme metal was just particularly unhinged, and there was such an authenticity of, I don't know, roughness about it. And it still has that element today. But I mean, the 90s was just a brilliant decade for music in general. And for you to be amongst, you know, bands such as Damaged and Terror Rust and Destroyer, even if it was just recording and whatnot, and now I know that you're still in some extreme bands like Diabolic Rites, Grave Temple, Neo
Yep.
Macabre, to name a few. I'd imagine you've seen a lot change within the scene from the 90s to now. You know, what's the comparison to playing in those bands in the 90s to the scene now? And have you seen it change dramatically, for better or worse?
Well, playing in bands in the 90s, it seemed to be very special. Like it was like discovering all these new styles of bands and new genres were coming up. And like death metal, when I started playing drums, was like something that had only been around for a very, very short time.
Hmm.
And as far as like people knowing about these genres, it wasn't really talked about. So finding out about it was more. To me, it was like it was awesome. Just discovering like all this underground music that I didn't really know existed,
Hmm.
and then just seeing how the Australian scene started to progress from the early 90s. It was just like all these death metal bands appearing, and the very first black metal bands in Australia. And to me, it was special because it was something that if you weren't familiar with anything to do with it, it wasn't easily accessible.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you can just click on things now and you can just find like 1,000 bands in 5 minutes. You had to seek it out. You had to find the magazines. You had to find the fanzines. You had to have a passion other than just being able to look it up on an internet, you know, a site or YouTube or whatever. Because back then there was absolutely nothing of any nature other than a few metal magazines and word of mouth. Because a lot of people talked about other bands, and there was tape trading and
Yes, yeah.
things like that got around. But people just gradually learned about these bands, and it created a bit more of a legend behind some of them, as opposed to sort of like just here, this is what the band looks like, this is what the band sounds like. Sometimes you'd hear a band, you'd be like, I wonder what the band looks like, or I wonder what the band are like as people, or you know, where they're from. Trying to find out where some of the bands were from. There was a lot of unknown things that made those bands more cult-like, I believe.
Oh,
anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I also believe the Australian scene had so many different sorts of bands. Like, they all sounded individual. They had like their own authentic style of playing and writing, and it just sounded like different from all the rest of the bands.
Yeah.
Like all the bands, if you think about from the scene from Australia at that time, you listen to them and none of them sound the same, even if they are under the same banner, like extreme metal or black metal or death metal. They all had their own really individualized sound. So comparing it to these days, I just find that everything's just super overproduced. There's still a lot of bands that play really good underground music, and they do sound like that authentic sort of thing. But there's a lot of bands that sound very, very
polished,
overly polished. Yeah, very, very polished. Like I don't particularly like extreme underground music sounding too clean and nice, and I don't know. Yeah, I think
I'm with
that's
you on
made
that.
the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It certainly was a time.
Yeah. I just, like, there were other factors, I guess, why it made it that way too. Just so many different factors, but the 90s is just unreplaceable for the way that the scene worked, the way that the bands did their stuff. Everything was completely different. Like, these days is like a totally new world.
Yeah.
Even doing like a video interview back then, it was just about a video camera. You couldn't even do, like, there are the advantages obviously now, because you've got so much technology that it makes it so much easier to be able to do things. But yeah, back in the day, it was like all that stuff was just I guess we didn't know how easy it was going to get.
Yeah, that's right. And even just for Australian bands being so cut off really back then, whereas now you can just record, put it up to Bandcamp, and someone in Japan can just click a button and hear. So it's a totally different time, but whether it's for good or bad, I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to get your take on that, because being in the scene so long, I thought you would definitely see some major changes, that's for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. So notably, you spent a lot of time with Damage, which you founded, I believe, in '89. Is that right, Matt? Did I get that date right?
Yeah. We started Easter weekend, 1989.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk me through how Damaged came together and how being in this band impacted your career moving forward and what your biggest achievements were within Damaged, your grandest moments even.
Okay. So starting Damaged was like something that I wasn't really sure about. I was only like 16 at the time,
So young, yeah.
and I didn't really know any other metal musicians. I didn't know any metal guitarists. I didn't know any vocalists. I didn't really know anyone that did that stuff.
Mm.
I knew a couple of metalheads that liked some stuff at my school, but they didn't play. So when I actually started practicing drums, I got a drum kit about mid 1988. And I started practicing in my parents' garage and bash away like every couple of days I'd be out there or nearly every day. And an old school friend from primary school used to walk past my house and he started to hear some of the drumming and he heard that I was playing some double kick and he thought I'm obviously into some metal. My old schoolmate wants to have a bash. And I was like, okay, what sort of stuff does he want to do? And he listed off a bunch of bands, and some of those were like Metallica, Slayer, Celtic Frost, SOD, a few bands like that. And so he came over and we started just going through some stuff and we started playing some covers and it was pretty rough. It was pretty average, but things just started to pick up. And he had another friend who was a guitarist at school and a bass player as well. And so it all just started to come together within a few months.
Right.
And within about probably, I reckon about 6 to 9 months, I think we had solidified things to the point where we actually had something that we could call an actual proper band.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we wrote the first song sometime within the first year or something like that. Like
Wow.
it took probably at least a year until we actually probably wrote a song.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we were just bashing away, seeing how it would go, and then things just started to take shape. So we spent a lot of time rehearsing, and then we played a couple of open mic nights at a local pub, and that was in Ballarat.
Right.
And we just started to play in front of like small crowds. And then within by 92, we'd written enough songs for our first demo. And so we went to Melbourne and recorded the first demo. And we'd also played our first show in Melbourne in 92 as well.
Right.
And things started to really take off from that point. We started writing for Do Not Spit.
Yeah.
And we got all the songs together between July 92 and July 93. We had everything ready and we recorded that album. And 93 was also the first year that we got an international support slot. And we played with Bolt Thrower in Melbourne, 2 shows, and we also played with Fear Factory on the Soul of a New Machine tour, their first tour. So we got those support slots a couple of months after we'd done the Do Not Spit album. So that was something that, like, personally for myself, is like a highlight to me even now, because it just took things to a new level, and it just created something for the band that we didn't expect. We really didn't expect any of those things. And international bands at that time, there wasn't a lot of bands touring around the early 90s. There would be bands that had toured, but for us that was pretty special. So
absolutely.
From that point, then we did some stuff, like we played with Cannibal Corpse. We played like 4 shows with Cannibal Corpse in early '95, and then we recorded an EP. And then there was band lineup changes, so things started to change a lot from that point.
Yeah.
And it sort of got a bit disjointed, and we got a record deal with Rotten Records in America. Did another album in '97, Token Remedies Research. Continued to tour, did stuff like Entombed tour. That was really cool. And then the band sort of went through more lineup changes, and there's a lot of information in there, but it was basically a bit of a revolving door with vocalists, bass players, things like that, that impacted the way that the band worked. And then I don't know, it didn't really go probably the way that I would have liked to have gone. We got Kevin Sharp from Brutal Truth to do the last album in 2000, and that sort of changed the direction of things and all that sort of stuff. But the band went through probably about a year and a half, 2 years of not doing anything after that. And then the final stage of the band was the final lineup, and we did about a year of gigs, and we finalised it in 2004. So
what a journey, though. Particularly you guys are such young fellas, you know, and to be supporting bands like that and taking to a stage with an international act, what an absolute achievement. That's massive. So yeah, well done.
I actually think my highlight would be supporting Morbid Angel in '96.
Yeah.
I think that tour to me was an absolute highlight, due to the fact that I was such a fan of Morbid Angel, and also the influence that Pete Sandoval, the drummer, had on my own drumming from an early part of my drumming. Like it really influenced me to get into more extreme stuff and just take it to the next level. So that blew my mind.
That would have been a very surreal experience for you, that's for sure, to be sharing the stage with one of your idols, no doubt. So that's a solid journey for Damage, that's for sure. I want to talk a lot about the Metal From the Grave tour, which is about to start in April, and we'll go through the details of the tour soon. But, you know, Matt, you've had a huge influence on the Australian metal scene, be it, you know, emerging bands or, you know, you've got a massive fan base. And no doubt you're going to have a lot of people there wanting to see what you're going to bring to this tour. triggered the idea to do this tour? It's filled with such nostalgia. I know you under Blast Abyss and your mate Bookings have been working so hard to pull this together with all the COVID bullshit that you've had to deal with too. But for you personally, you know, where did this idea come from?
Originally, there was talk about a drum clinic, and so after thinking about that for a short while, I didn't really particularly like the idea of a drum clinic, because I just find it very sort of restrictive and sort of bizarre. And I just, every time I think of a clinic, I just think of sitting in a music store with a few people sitting on seats, watching you play drums, and I just sort of think that just sort of feels weird, playing extreme music.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's just a bit like, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't really want to do that. So I started thinking about playing music that I used to play, and some bands that I really respect as well. And so I just come up with this idea that the band's music that I'm playing is from bands that don't exist anymore. They don't play live. They're not active. So all the music is from bands that aren't around anymore. So I just formulated some ideas, made a bunch of phone calls, and myself and Tony from your mate started putting it together, and it took a while, but we managed to create a tour and make it all happen. That's basically the main idea of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent concept, and I know there's a lot of fans, particularly of Damaged, very keen to hear these songs live again, because, you know, we all get devastated when our bands call it a day, but it does happen. So I think it's fantastic that you're doing this. I think there'll be a lot of happy people there on those nights, that's for sure. You obviously have some pretty cool musicians playing with you as well. You've got Bo Remy from Hobbs, you've got Jason Holt, Steve Watts. Have I missed anyone? I think there's Zach Kaplan too.
We had to get another bass player, so Jason couldn't do it.
Right.
We got a guy from a band from the 90s, from Sydney, who played in a band from Sydney called Grungen, and that was a band that had the original drummer from Mortal Sin in it.
Right.
And the bass player's name is Donk, and he is doing 5 of the 7 shows.
Okay.
Steve Watts. Yeah, Jason was unable to do the tour, so we just had to do that. And then I've got a bass player for the Melbourne and Ballarat show, which is the original Terrorist bass player, Dave Byrne. And I've also got the other Terrorist guitarist, Fanza, who's going to play the Ballarat and Melbourne shows as well. And I'm also playing with Bo Remy's son for the Hobbs stuff, Zach. He's playing guitar. And I've also got Scott Edgar, and I've got Damon from Misery playing with me up in Brisbane, just for the Brisbane show.
That's so cool. How are they all feeling about getting back on stage and playing the music that they've played for so long?
I think they're pretty excited. Even the idea of it, when we first started talking about it, I think initially they were like, really? Like, do you really want to do this? So I'm like, why not? Like, let's just do it. So after we established that certain musicians were going to come on board and do it, we've been pretty excited. Everyone's been really good, and I've been talking to them and getting updates and talking about rehearsals, and they've all been learning all the stuff. and we've all been remotely rehearsing our stuff, our parts, because we live in different states.
Yeah.
Pretty much from one side of Australia to the other side of Australia. So it's a little bit crazy, like logistically, just trying to make this all happen. But it's happening. So
and well done to you guys for pulling it together, because exactly, very much a challenge logistically for you guys, that's for sure. So it's so exciting. I'm very, very keen. We'll come back to that in just a moment. I did want to talk quickly about your Blast Abyss business. You've branched out with this business offering music. It's a music production studio, right?
Yes.
Offering sound engineering, drum session recording, and you're also doing it on an international level. How successful has this business been for you, and what sort of clientele do you tend to seek?
Okay, so I've got a few projects that I'm working on at the moment, and I've already done a recording for one of them, and that is a local death metal project. Mm-hmm. And that guy is been around, been doing music just as long as I have. Paul Hodgson, and that is called Dreaming Death, and it's like old 80s style death metal, like the band Death, Leprosy, and also like Pestilence and Possessed and things bands like that. And I've also done another black metal album with some guys, and they're local guys, Adelaide guys, and that's called Lumen Ad Mortem. And that's like atmospheric black metal. Mm-hmm. And I've also done some drums for my own band. Which I won't go into any great detail about at the moment, but I've recorded a full-length album. So that all happened last year.
Okay.
During all the COVID chaos, and this year I've got two more. I've got like a grindcore project to do, and I've got another death metal project to do in the next couple of months as well.
Wow, you're flat out. That's good. Business is booming.
It's pretty busy actually.
Good on you.
Yeah, it's going great. Thank you.
I've got a question here from a good friend of mine, Mr. Rob Dunn. He's a big fan of yours. He's one of these unsung heroes, in my opinion. He's a huge supporter of the scene, continually promoting and buying albums, buying merch. He's actually coming to the meet and greet with you in Newcastle, which is really cool. But he has a question that he wanted to know, because he's a massive Damaged fan. And I think this question highlights his sound engineering background, but nevertheless, he would like to know what the significant differences were in recording production techniques from Do Not Split all the way through to Purified in Pain, and which album do you feel most proud of?
Okay, production-wise, okay, so Do Not Spit was done on Pro Tools, and there was a lot of things I didn't really know about production. I didn't really know about much to do with recording when I first started recording stuff. It was a bit daunting actually to me. But the first album, Do Not Spit, was done on Pro Tools, and there was technology I'd only just learnt about at the time. Things like triggers for kicks, and just all the digital stuff I had no idea about. The next recording was Passive Backseat Demon Engines, and that was done analog style recording. Mm-hmm. And I was fairly disappointed with that recording. There was issues with the kick drum sounds. There was issues with a few things. I just didn't really particularly like it. It did get remixed in 2001, I think it was. and it sounds a lot better. We actually took it to the same studio that Do Not Spit was done at, but it was done by a different sound engineer, but he achieved the right outcome. And then the Token Remedies research album, that one was done also on an analog setup. I don't really know all the technical sort of terms. I'm not very good with that. Yep. But I actually have a hard time listening to that album too. It's too dry. It's too unmixed. It doesn't have the elements that I really wished for at the time. It sort of lacks the things that I really wished were there. And then the last album was recorded at the same studio as Do Not Spit in 2000, Purified in Pain. The way that was recorded was done with Pro Tools, but I just think that album to me lacks some things about it as well that I don't know. I feel like it. If I knew some of the things that I know now, I would hope that I would have said something about it. But it is what it is. It's history and done, and it is what it is. So there was a lot of things about recording and back in the 90s that I feel in some ways some studios lacked the knowledge, or the sound engineers, some of them lacked some sense of knowledge. And working with certain places, I guess if I had known, we could have done things differently, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, it's that good old hindsight and lessons learnt. But yeah, great albums nonetheless. Yes. So you have recently just posted a pretty massive set list for Metal from the Grave tour, which I was so excited to see. It's going to be a good long set by the sounds. How did you go through the process of picking these tracks? And obviously these tracks would have some kind of sentimental purpose for you, I'm assuming. But yeah, how did you go about picking the tracks? It's quite a list.
Yeah, so not all of those songs will be played at every single show.
Okay.
There are some that will be played at individual gigs, but the set lists for the Damage stuff, all of those songs will be played at every single show.
Right.
And the Damage songs I chose just off Do Not Spit. And I chose those songs because I feel like those songs are the ones that I feel from Damage fans and from my own personal feeling are the ones that really I probably enjoy those ones the most out of all the stuff that we ever wrote and recorded.
Right.
And so that made sense to me. I just picked the stuff off Do Not Spit because I just thought that makes sense. It's like the stuff that really got Damaged noticed, and I just felt like I'm going to play like 7 or 8 songs off that. The Manicore stuff, myself and Steve, we talked about it, and we came to pick 3 songs, and those songs are, like, for me, are pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of dynamics in them. Very old school death metal, are very aggressive. Some really good heavy, slower rock parts in some of those songs too. So the Manicore stuff is like probably from around the 92, 90 through to 94, around that time. So similar sort of stuff, like time frame for the Damage stuff.
Yeah.
the Misery songs I chose, and they're off the first album. They're five songs off the first album. A Necessary Evil is just like, there's just something to me that I just was like, this is awesome. It's super heavy. The production's awesome. I had to play songs off that, and I'm really glad to be able to do that. And as far as the set goes, the first 4 songs on the album are played in that exact order.
That's very cool.
And then the last song is a song that they wrote, which was on their first demo, actually, that they also re-recorded, which I really liked, Sorting of the Insects as well. So I chose those, and they're from 93 as well. So mostly all the stuff is from that era. But Terrorist, obviously, because Terrorist was a later band, that stuff was recorded in 2006. I just chose to do a couple of Terrorist songs just because I just thought I'd like to do it, since the last time we actually played live was in 2008, when we did a tour with Pig Destroyer. So I just thought, fuck it, let's do it. So 2 songs off that, and we're also doing a cover song that we used to do live, and that was a Morbid Angel cover. And Chapel of Ghouls is one of my favourite old school Morbid Angel death metal songs. So I chose that. And Hobbs Angel of Death, I just chose some of those songs off the first album from 87, sorry. So just because I like that first Hobbs album.
Yeah.
And I'd played in the band for about a year, and me and Bo are still mates and talking, so I just asked him, and yeah, he said yes. So yeah, it's just a mixture of old school Australian metal.
And your favourites, which is great. Can't wait. I'm so excited. So excited that it's now general admission too. I wanted to talk to you about that because we had some setbacks with the original tour dates because of COVID. And obviously you had people coming from interstate and borders were shut down. But as it stands now, things are moving forward really well. I can't see anything blocking it now, which is great. The tour kicks off in Canberra on the 15th of April. Comes to Sydney on the 16th at the Vanguard, and then to the Hamilton Station Hotel on the 17th. I'm actually going to be doing Sydney and then backing up Newcastle, so send help.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to have to recover. But I'm very excited. But where is the show taking off after Newcastle?
Okay, so then we go to Ballarat the following weekend. At the Eastern Station Hotel.
Yep.
And then the next night is in Melbourne, and that's at the Bendigo Hotel. So that's the following Friday and Saturday after the New South Wales shows. In Brisbane on the Friday, the following Friday. And that is the very end of April. And then the 1st of May is Adelaide at Enigma Bar.
So anyone that's watching this, obviously the best place to get all the details and dates and ticket pricings and whatnot is through Moshtix or Your Mate Bookings as well. I know you've got a lot of stuff up on Blast Abyss page as well on Instagram, but you're also doing a very cool meet and greet, which is, it's so great that you're doing that. And I know there's a lot of people interested in that. What can people expect if they do want to pay a little bit more to do the very personalised meet and greet with you? What comes with that meet and greet?
So they come to sound check and get to see how a sound check goes, and hear some of the songs, get a bit of glimpse, all that sort of stuff. They get first dibs on the merch, which I've got an extensive merch range for the tour. shirts, hoodies. I've got an unreleased CD that I've finally got out. I've got some signature sticks that I got made through Fish Sticks, my guys that look after me, and pretty much just I'll have a chat with them and just pre-show, yeah.
Sounds great. And unfortunately the audio, we did lose the audio slightly there, but if anyone does want to know and look it up themselves, all that information is on the Your Mate Bookings Insta and Facebook page to say what does come in with the meet and greet. But we got most of it, Matt, so that's fine. If that's the only problem with these Zoom interviews, sometimes they're a bit temperamental. But as I said, there are general admission tickets. They're still available. So, now is the best time more than ever to get behind these gigs, because we've been whinging about not having live shows. Then we were whinging about having to fucking well sit down at live shows. Now we can fucking stand. So buy tickets and get to Metal from the Grave tour. There's also some wicked support acts at each city. So it's going to be an awesome night. Before we go, if there's anything more you'd like to say in regards to the tour or just anything in general to people that are watching, go for it.
I'm just looking forward to playing the songs. I haven't done some of this stuff for about 17 years, I think it is. And I think it's just be really exciting. This opportunity, I'm really grateful for. I'm really grateful for everyone that's been supporting it and everyone that's going to come. And it's just exciting. I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Thank you for everything.
It's going to be a great tour. I can feel it in my bones.
Awesome.
All right, Matt. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you, and I'll see you up on stage.
Thanks heaps, Kelly. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.